Currently, President Trump appears to be facing his greatest political crisis, with some Republican lawmakers urging the release of the Epstein documents. A bill for their disclosure is likely to pass the House soon. Over 70% of these Epstein documents involve President Trump, placing him in his biggest crisis yet. Today, let's take a closer look at this issue. Let's get right into it. The United States House Oversight Committee released new emails between Epstein, a minor sex offender and financier, and his acquaintances. Of 2,324 emails, 1,670, 71%, mentioned President Trump, sparking renewed controversy. In particular, the frequency of mentions of President Trump surged around the time of his presidential election victory. Epstein often criticized President Trump to acquaintances, shared related info with reporters, and answered others' questions about him. Former President Clinton's name appeared over 500 times in the released emails. Most mentions appeared in emails sent before Trump's 2015 campaign announcement, some involving Hillary Clinton. Obama was also mentioned. Celebrities like Mountbatten Winter, who lost his Prince title, and former Harvard President Larry Summers were also mentioned. As I was reading, suspicions about President Trump's connection to Epstein are being reignited. In fact, suspicions that President Trump is associated with Epstein have existed for quite some time. It's also come up repeatedly in arguments with Elon Musk. Of course, whether President Trump was actually involved or not, there hasn't been any concrete evidence yet. With Epstein's emails public, President Trump's position became awkward. And in the emails released by the House Oversight Committee, an email revealed President Trump knew about Epstein's sex crimes and hinted at possible involvement. The email implied that Epstein had information to expose about President Trump, and it stated that President Trump knew about the girls. He also mocked President Trump, calling him a dog that doesn't bark, and claimed only he could bring Trump down. He even sent an email to a New York Times reporter when President Trump was running for the presidential election. It was also confirmed that he sent an email asking if they wanted to see a photo of Trump with girls in bikinis in his kitchen. The Make America Great Again group in the United States often uses these Epstein documents to attack the Democratic Party, because Bill Gates and former President Bill Clinton were involved. The problem is, with stories of President Trump being involved, the situation is getting strange. Of course, just based on the frequency of mentions in the emails, it's hard to say for sure whether President Trump personally received sexual favors, but at the very least, people are saying that President Trump might have known about Epstein's sexual exploitation. Also, the released emails include surprising exchanges between President Bill Clinton and President Trump, so these Epstein documents are still widely discussed. This has caused visible division within the Make America Great Again camp. The United States House of Representatives is still debating whether to fully release the Epstein documents. Support is growing in the United States House of Representatives for a vote to release the Epstein documents. The House is urging the Department of Justice to release all Epstein investigation information it has. The problem is that until now, there have been continuous attempts to vote on the bill to disclose the Epstein documents, but Speaker Johnson, who has the authority to bring the bill to the floor, has been refusing to allow a vote. The measure needed 218 votes to reach the floor, but 4 Republican members defected. As a result, 4 Republicans and all Democrats signed, securing the House majority of 218. Most in the House believe the Epstein bill will pass easily. In response, President Trump has criticized the move to release the Epstein documents as a scam and continues to deny any allegations of involvement in the case. He also pressured Republican lawmakers to withdraw from the bill's petition. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, often called the female Trump, recently changed her position and supported releasing the Epstein documents. Congresswoman Greene was seen as one of the most loyal backers. She began to go off track when the United States launched airstrikes on Iran, and now she's openly attacking President Trump. She now supports releasing the Epstein documents. President Trump has escalated his attacks, calling Representative Greene a traitor who betrayed the Republican Party. Even the Make America Great Again camp is shaken as Representative Greene openly rebels. Analysts say United States local elections show growing divisions within the Make America Great Again coalition. Some analyses suggest they may lose next year's midterms. A Reuters and Ipsos poll shows most Republican members backed President Trump's administration, but only 4 supported his handling of the Epstein documents. At this level, the Epstein documents are currently acting as President Trump's biggest risk. Of course, it's not certain whether John Thune, the Senate Republican leader, will bring the Epstein documents disclosure bill to a vote, and it seems like Republican senators are showing signs of rejecting it. Even if it passes the Senate, it's almost certain that President Trump will exercise his veto, so it's unlikely that this bill will pass. That means President Trump is highly vulnerable to political attacks. As a result, President Trump seems to be trying to get out of this situation. President Trump ordered the Justice Department to investigate ties between Bill Clinton, named in the Epstein documents, and top Democrats like Larry Summers, a former Obama advisor. The Democratic Party is attacking President Trump over the Epstein documents, and Trump has responded with a counteroffensive. Since the bill will almost certainly pass in the House of Representatives, President Trump abruptly reversed course and urged Republicans to support releasing the Epstein documents. He apparently shifted his stance due to expected mass defections in the Republican Party. President Trump described the controversy over the release of the Epstein documents as a Democratic scam orchestrated by radical left-wing fanatics to divert attention from the Republican Party's great achievements, such as ending the shutdown. He also said that they should vote in favor to move past this issue. President Trump had no other options. The bill was guaranteed to pass the House regardless of his actions. As I said earlier, with the Senate and the President's veto still ahead, it may be a long time before the Epstein documents are fully released. President Trump will likely face major political pressure over the recent Epstein document controversy. The numerous email mentions alone are already harming President Trump's image. The Democratic Party and major media will turn this into a question of President Trump's morality, whether or not he was actually involved. On top of that, because President Trump's initial response was to strongly deny it by calling it a scam, from now on, instead of focusing on the consistency of his defense message, the narrative may shift to questioning why he is reacting so sensitively, which is expected to increase his political burden. Next, within the party, the defection of loyalist Marjorie Taylor Greene has become a signal flare, and now subtle cracks are appearing within the Make America Great Again faction. This is being evaluated not as a simple internal dispute, but as the most dangerous sign that could lead to a realignment of power within the Republican Party. The fact that some Republican lawmakers have opposed the disclosure of the Federal Security Agency documents shows that President Trump's grip on the party is not what it used to be, and these internal cracks are likely to cause strategic confusion in the upcoming midterm elections. Public opinion on the situation is serious. According to the Reuters Ipsos poll, even Republican supporters lack trust in how Federal Security Agency documents are managed, so fewer will defend President Trump on this issue, regardless of his future messages. If the moral risk narrative becomes fixed, many moderates and some Republican supporters may leave, likely hurting the election strategy. Framing it as, what was in the documents that made Trump oppose so strongly, will only increase suspicions over time. To counter, President Trump will likely intensify his aggressive tactics, like ordering counter-investigations into Democrats, shifting the narrative, and attacking the media. However, while this approach may be effective in rallying his base, it could be detrimental to expanding support among moderates, and may become another burden for future midterm election strategies. In the end, President Trump is likely to face triple pressure from this incident: a decline in political credibility, internal division within the Republican Party, and weakening public support. This isn't just a scandal, it's a major crisis that could threaten President Trump's entire political career. The main factor here is that time is against President Trump. Even without full disclosure, the growing likelihood of it is causing ongoing political damage and will remain a structural risk for President Trump in the coming months. Especially since the media and political circles are expanding this issue as if they are uncovering new information every week, President Trump is likely to be forced into a war of attrition, having to issue defensive messages each time. If this trend continues, it could spark a core debate in the Republican Party about handling the Trump risk, likely weakening President Trump's political standing over time. How do you think President Trump will handle this crisis? Share your thoughts in the comments. That's it for this video, thanks.